am finally here posting my comments on the last chapter of Harry Potter Book 2. So I did actually read this chapter according to schedule, or maybe like a day late, way back in March. But then I went down a rabbit hole that made the video I wanted to post about it a lot more complicated than the rest of these videos. Add to that the fact that my work is always the busiest in the month of April. And yeah, I've been AWOL. I did not post a single one of these videos for the entire month of April. Oops. So today's video is twofold. One, I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I wanted to talk about Harry Potter Book 2, Chapter 18, Dobby's Reward. And if you stick through that, I'll also give an update on my plans for this Harry Potter book club. So the main thing I wanted to talk about when reading this chapter was about this conversation that Dumbledore has with Harry about why he was put in Gryffindor. This is when Harry voices his concerns to Dumbledore that maybe he should have been in Slytherin, but Dumbledore's response is that the Sorting Hat put him in Gryffindor precisely because he asked to be. We all know this quote. "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Reading this reminded me of a conversation that I had recently had with my niece, who had done the Hogwarts sorting test with me. She went into it hoping to get Ravenclaw, and she basically ended up being a hat stall between Slytherin and Hufflepuff. But also, like, all of the percentages were pretty close. I took a picture of her points, and they were all in the 20s, with Slytherin being 28% and the lowest being Ravenclaw at 22%. I basically said that she could probably choose whichever house she wanted because they were all so close, citing specifically this conversation in the books. Well, after this conversation, I was wondering if maybe the points weren't actually as close as I was saying they were, and it made me wonder, is it possible to get an exact tie on the Pottermore Wizarding World sorting test if you're doing all questions? So I dusted off the spreadsheet that my sister and I used to analyze the sorting test like 6 years ago. I pulled up my iPad for scratch paper, and I pulled up VS Code to do some math for me. The first thing I did was look at the different types of questions and decide that I could group some of them together. For instance, there's 15 different questions where the answers match 1-to-1 to each of the houses. So if I want a tie, I'm just going to evenly split those to have 4 or 3 points for each house. And then there's also the questions that only have 2 answers, and each answer gives 1 point for 2 houses. And those ones, they come in pairs, where if you just answer the opposite on 2 of them, it'll give you a even spread for calculating all the houses. So among all 21 of those questions, if we're going for a tie, our responses are going to look like that point-wise. So after combining, then I'm only looking at about 1.2 million different options, and I could calculate those. And it turns out of those, there are 109 total possibilities that end in a perfect tie. Interestingly, about 600,000 of them have closer scores than my niece did. It's like half. The other interesting thing I found is that the animal question throws things off. If you want a tie, you have to choose the tabby cat, because the rest of these will give you a 0.25 somewhere, which will make a full tie impossible, except for the dragon toad, but that one can't pair with other questions to actually make a full point. Here's an example of one of the 109 possible ties. I'll go through the pages real quick in case you want to pause to read the answers. I also did similar calculations with trying to see the maximum difference, so like the strongest you could be in one house. And it turns out the highest percentage you can get is 78%. Interestingly, the maximum percentages are different for each house. So it's 78 for Slytherin, but it's 77 for Ravenclaw, it's 76 for Hufflepuff, and it's only 74 for Gryffindor. And I realized I'm not as cool as I think I am, because my house test is clearly Ravenclaw, but it's still only 45%. For those who are curious, this is the one I filled out today. Anyway, I'm really curious. For those who have taken the full Hogwarts house test with all questions, have you ever either gotten like a legitimate tie, or like really, really close to a tie, or ever gotten more than like 70% for whatever house you are? So that concludes my over-the-top Hogwarts house test analysis. Now let's talk a little bit more about the fate of this Harry Potter book club. Obviously, I'm pretty behind on my schedule because I went the entire month of April without reading any of the books. Plus, I've been thinking about it more, and I'm going to be super busy for the next 7 weeks, so I'm going to push off catching up again until that busy season is over. So here's my updated schedule. I am planning on picking back up on July 1st and reading 2 chapters per day, and that'll hopefully get me through the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth books pretty much by the middle of October. And then I'd be back on track for the entirety of book 7, still finishing it by the end of the year.